Welcome to Nintendo Voice Chat for the week of July 28th, 2016. I'm Jose Otero. This is IGN's Nintendo Show. Joining me this week is Brian Altano.
What's up, guys?
Andrew Goldfarb.
Hello.
And sitting in for our dearly on vacation Peer Schneider, we found another German basically to take his place.
Basically,
but internet legend in many ways, Jeff Gerstmann.
Hey, hi, hello.
You may know Jeff's work from GiantBomb.com. He is a founder / editor-in-chief there, veteran commentator in the video game space for many years now, a former editorial director of GameSpot as well. I mean, you started writing about video games in the mid-90s, early 90s?
Yeah, I got my first paying video game writing gig in 94 and then started at GameSpot in 96.
What was the site? What was
it was a magazine.
Okay.
It was called Blaster. It made it a whole 3 issues.
Okay.
It was funded by the owner of Creative Labs. So it was like packed into Sound Blaster boxes.
Oh, wow.
And it was on newsstands, apparently. A very rickety thing. I don't know. I wrote some stuff for it, and then suddenly, like, all the money was gone, and I was out on the street. So I was bitter at 19.
So that was that's a good market for people who bought Sound Blasters every month.
Yeah, exactly. If you were buying a Sound Blaster every month, you could read my column, and it was great. Yeah, I was actually in charge. I had the one PC in the office, so I was the one that got to write about, here's some things you might be able to do if you have a sound card.
Wow.
But the rest of it was just kind of like lifestyle.
I love the idea of like a magazine about sound cards.
I wish it was that. I wish it was just that. It'd be like, all right, here's the IRQ settings. Here's how you really nail this stuff
So you can't
down.
hear this. We're describing it to you.
It
Just
sounds
picture,
so good.
what's the best loud you ever heard?
Oh, this wavetable synthesis is going to make you crazy. Yeah.
Do you still have any issues or
I
magazines?
have like unopened boxes of them and stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah, it made it a full 3 issues. The 4th issue made it to Blue Line, and then they kicked us out.
Do you have any old Sound Blasters? I'm trying to hook up a really old laptop.
I've got an all-32. So that was they were giving me sound cards and stuff.
Yeah.
So at the time it was like, here's a CD-ROM drive, which in '94 was like $1
million.
million. And I'm like, wow, this is a double-speed CD-ROM drive, and I couldn't even figure out how to make it work on my PC. These things were garbage.
All right.
Sim Wong Hu, founder of Creative Labs.
That's right.
A big listener of the show.
Yeah, I know. He writes in every week.
Hopefully
He's
your
like,
business burns to the ground.
That's right.
Yeah, or hopefully you could leave us a review, just like GR66, who on iTunes,
Not enough Sound Blaster talk.
iTunes says, enjoyable show, great host. Glad I stumbled onto this podcast. It's quickly become one of my favorites. 3 hosts are very good at what they do, each bringing an interesting perspective. Shows also focus and provides entertaining analysis of all things Nintendo. Keep up the great work. We hopefully will not disappoint you, GR66. And actually, it has been 3 years since we rebooted Nintendo Voice Chat, and I got here and took over the show, which just happened this week, and it kind of blows my mind how fast time flies in this business.
When you start doing a weekly podcast, stuff like that, especially, like, it's like, oh man, 3 years, 4 years. Like,
yeah, it's like, wait,
Well, one of
what?
the things I figured out, not to get too granular here, but we all live in the Bay Area, which doesn't truly get seasons, or if it does, it's like 3 times in one day. So you look up once and you're like, is it it's winter? Holy sh! And then all of a sudden, like 3 years go by, and you're like, how many E3s have I been set? 8 E3. And how many have you gone to, Jeff?
all of them. I don't know.
Everyone,
how many
right?
is that? 21?
21
20?
E3s.
Oh,
Yeah.
starting with the Atlanta ones and stuff?
No, it was in LA before.
and
Atlanta.
Daniel went to Atlanta.
I went to a couple of CESs before E3 existed, because they used to have the games there. They put them in a tent outside in Vegas because they really respected what video games brought to the show. So yeah, there was just like, Capcom had a huge line for Street Fighter 2 for the SNES and that sort of stuff.
Did you ever make it out to like Space World or anything in Japan?
I went to Space World twice. I think I played Echo Delta, which didn't come out for the N64.
I love the idea
I remember
of
liking it.
Of preview events for games that we now regard as like some of the most classic things of all time. Like, I don't know about Super Mario's cape in this game. This game is a bust. And like, nowadays we're like, that's one of the top 5 greatest games ever made.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I was kind of, so Sega was local and Nintendo was in Washington, so I would go to some like Genesis focused events and saw like early Sega CD stuff and some of that stuff. But yeah, Nintendo. They had just the most amazing booths back then. Just like when Killer Instinct was coming to the Super Nintendo, they had this big stage show with the music and all this stuff. It was just dumb. Yeah, actually, I guess they haven't learned. I mean, they're still doing that, right? I mean, E3 this year was obviously like insane in a completely different way.
Yeah, they built a forest temple this year.
Right? Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you've had plenty of great work in your career. I mean, I've had a lot of respect for your reviews, a lot of respect
thanks.
for your opinions. But one of the things
That's a mistake.
that you have done that I absolutely adore was, I want to say in 2014, you and Dan Reichert, who was just hired on to Giant Bomb around that time, did a video where you went to Six Flags and rode Medusa while playing Super Mario Bros. 3, which is just like, like what? So talk about this, please, because this is one of my favorite things I think I've ever seen on the internet.
So that was all Dan. that was Dan's idea, and it turns out that this was not, in the grand scheme of things, not too long after we were acquired by CBS. And it turns out when you call up any place and say, "Hey, we're with CBS," they get back to you. So we made the call, and he came up with the idea of like, "Oh, let's try to ride this roller coaster again and again and again, and see who can get further in Super Mario Brothers 3 before they get too sick and have to get off the roller coaster." And I'm like, well, that's a dumb stunt, but yes, absolutely, of course, let's go. So I think I made it 4 times, he made it 5.
That's correct.
On the roller coaster, and then, but the thing we didn't account for is that the glare on that 3DS screen is a nightmare. When it's an outdoor roller coaster, it's not Space Mountain or something, so it was impossible to see the screen. And also, just for the amount of like shaking and being upside down and all that other stuff, it was really hard to follow the screen in the first place. So it was. I found myself kind of like playing the game on like downward slopes, or anytime it wasn't moving fast. If we were going up, I could play the game for a while, and we would very quickly play the game. But then as soon as anything started happening, I kind of had to start looking past the screen out at what was actually happening, or I would have been very, very sick.
At what point during this stunt did you start to regret this stunt? Like which number turn around the Medusa?
It was actually as we were strapping in, as we were strapping into the roller coaster and like mounting GoPros all over it. That was the feeling of like, one of these GoPros is going to fly off and hit me in the face, and it's going to be like Fabio and that bird.
Thank you for referencing that. And I bring that up like once a year. No one remembers it anymore. It's one of the greatest moments in human history.
It really is. It really is.
Fabio's on a roller coaster and a bird flew right into his face, and he's like flanked by these 2 beautiful models, and he just gets off the roller coaster like, oh, the bird hit my face. And there's blood and feathers everywhere. It's so good.
A mess. It's
Life
a mess.
is a gift.
Yeah, it really is. But we went there before they had opened for the day. So we kind of had a hard stop at when they actually were going to start letting people in. After the first time through, I felt pretty good, and I was like, yes, definitely, let's go again and keep playing the game. But the game was impossible to play. I think Dan finished like the first level and then stopped there, which was enough because I kept running out of lives on like level 2, and you'd have to reset back to level 1. And so in the grand scheme of things, he got further than me, and then went on a victory lap on the roller coaster just to rub it in. And then we drove back to the office from, this was in Vallejo, so it's I don't know, like a 45-minute drive, something like that. And both of us just like white as a sheet, just driving, and just going, oh man. Like we both felt like we could have been sick for like the next 6 or 7 hours. It was like when people get it really bad in VR. It was that feeling of like, well, your day's ruined. It was definitely.
And knowing Dan Reichert, you guys probably started your day at like Taco Bell breakfast or something like that.
He definitely did. Yes. I went on an empty stomach, thinking that was maybe the right move. Was like, I'm going to sip some water. Everything will be fine.
Was it, or you? I mean, you still got sick regardless.
I didn't actually like throw up, but we were definitely very woozy. He almost forced himself to before we got in the car, but we held our mud that day.
So I guess my last question would be, what was it hard to convince Six Flags to do this? You said they called you back.
Yeah, not at all. No.
Really?
We were just like, hey, we want to come out there and do a thing, show off do this thing on the park, this stunt, and told them exactly what we were planning to do, and they were like, okay.
Yeah.
Especially for a weekday morning, I would imagine.
Exactly. Yeah.
So this was Great America?
No, this was Six Flags, like Discovery Kingdom or whatever. The thing that used to be Marine World.
I was gonna say, because at Great America, they'd be like, "Oh, you can bring a gun on there. We don't care."
Basically,
the place is a wreck.
Yeah. It'd be like launching fireworks at each other.
Instead, he had Wii remote wrist straps holding down the 3DS.
Yeah,
so it wouldn't fly
we
out
had
of his
straps
hands.
in both slots, and then the 3DS was also duct taped to our hands.
Oh man,
which was also unpleasant at the end.
What's that thing, Edward 40 hands, where you tape a 40?
Yes, it was totally. Yes, we played 40 hands with a 3DS, and like regular 40 hands, there were no winners as far as I'm concerned.
And you still end up vomiting.
Yeah, basically.
All right,
that's awesome.
Fair enough. So then
we talk about what to do next pretty frequently, but we haven't quite pulled the trigger on something yet. But I think I know there were a couple of different ideas going around that would be way worse. way worse.
Oh man, I could only imagine. All right, well then, on the topic of way worse, Nintendo's grim financials happened sort of yesterday, last night, in Japan, or the night before. Basically, it's looking bad, and it's something that I feel we almost should have seen coming, right? So this whole roller coaster ride started Friday, the week before, when Nintendo releases a statement saying, hey, we're not changing our consolidated numbers for the year, which surprised some folks because Pokemon Go has been doing so well. I mean, the stock price just flew over the course of 2 weeks. And then you find out Nintendo, sort of comes forward to just kind of remind folks, hey, we're not changing these. And also, this is our relationship with the Pokemon Company, with Niantic, which is we don't own them.
Yeah. It was almost like they should have written it like, you idiots.
Yeah,
seriously. Like, thank you for the increased valuation for this couple of days, but look, let's get real. Like, yeah, that.
Yeah,
it's one of those things that shakes your faith in the concept of investment.
Exactly. Like people who are putting 5 figures into this company, 6 figures into this company don't know what they're making and not making, and it's really funny.
It's like giving $10 billion to Turtle from Entourage. You're like, he's not the dude that's in all the movies, right? They just hang out together.
Yeah, but some of those investment dollars too could have just come from, hey, this is a IP affiliated with Nintendo. Yeah. They do have another mobile game coming out. We want to buy in now before the stock price goes even higher. But yeah, Nintendo coming out to say that definitely was a sign that Q1 was not going to be great. But then we woke up to, so first of all, next trading day, the stock fell 18%, which is the most it can fall, according to Japanese trading rules. But then we wake up to the net loss of 24.5 billion yen. That's with a B.
Which totally just sounds worse.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's probably like $50 in America. But that's,
234 million.
That's such a hard number.
Yeah, 234 million. It's still pretty high. Where in comparison, last year they posted an $8.3 billion yen profit. So we knew coming out of E3, Q1 and probably Q2 are tanked just because there's not a lot going on.
Yeah. I mean, their current hardware is pretty much done. They're wrapping that stuff up. They got Zelda out, obviously, but they're full steam ahead on NX as far as development goes. I mean, it makes sense.
Yep. And
it's also, I mean, you couldn't give them money this year if you were trying to. Like they just weren't selling a lot of games. There was some stuff here and there, mostly kind of smaller, like re-releases, quirky stuff, HD remakes and stuff. But for the most part, you were like, I want to give you money for games and I can't.
It's Mario Tennis and Star Fox, right? I think.
Well, Star Fox Zero, Kirby Planet Robobot, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, but all like niche games for the most part. Rhythm Heaven Mega Mix, favorite, but also Monster Hunter Generations and Bravely Second were all within that window. But again, nothing that like pushes sort of Nintendo hardware or does that. But then the other sort of surprise was that Amiibo might be stalling out as well. Well, maybe it's not a surprise, but Nintendo's statement was, okay, so these held at approximately 1.770 million units and 1.30 million units, respectively. This is card type and figure type, which is surprising because they put out a Kirby set. There was a Kirby set for Planet Robobot, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, that came out alongside the game. I mean, it's weird because a year ago was still like Amiibo fever. Right. Like that was still when like you could not even get them if you wanted them, and so. It's interesting that they released a lot fewer in the same time this year, but you could still buy them, and like to fall, what was it, 60-something% compared to last year?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well,
it seems like they probably just have solved like the inventory issue. They know how to get those things in the channel and keep them there, so they're not selling out as much as they used to. Skylanders went through the same thing in year one, where it was impossible to find them. But then by the end, when they were getting ready to release Giants, like they'd figured it out. So that stuff was already all the way out there. But also, you have to wonder if there's a finite number of people who are going to go Amiibo crazy, and once they were able to buy all the ones they wanted to,
that's it.
Maybe they're done.
Yeah. I was gonna to piggyback on that. I think they just shipped their 100th like individual Amiibo SKU, not including the cards, the other day, and. I mean, how much space does the average person have for these things? Even if you're collecting all of them. And the other problem, too, is like the Smash Brothers set isn't done yet. So if you're trying to sort of be this finite collector of like, this is what I want, is the whole Smash set. Like Bayonetta's not even out yet.
Bayonetta, Corrin, and Cloud.
Cloud.
Oh, and that's an out for people, too. Like, because there are all these lines, like the Mario line, the Animal Crossing line, the Kirby line are not kind of moving people the way the Smash Brothers line did, because that's like a really easy, I'm going to get these 52 or whatever it is and then be out. Whereas like by the point where Timmy and Tommy are coming out, or like the third Meta Knight or whatever it is, like I think those are a little less.
And if you're not playing those games, you're less likely to buy those amiibo. I mean, Smash is obviously like an order of magnitude larger than most of those other games.
For sure.
So,
yeah, but you're also shipping games that at the end of the day didn't have functionality in them, right? Like Monster Hunter through third parties, or Bravely Second, or Tokyo Mirage. None of those games really had that. Star Fox Zero had compatibility, and so did Planet Robobot.
But even Planet Robobot was like, if you used a Ness or a Yoshi or something unrelated, you still got something.
Well, and that's part of the problem I feel like Amiibo runs into too, whereas because they work across everything, sometimes you already have that thing. So it's like, well, why would you buy more?
Or in a lot of cases they don't. I mean, that's the other thing. If, you think about Infinity and Skylanders being these figures where day one they were like, these figures will work, and they've carried them forward. I mean, not in, the year one Skylanders are not fun to use on the most recent one, but it at least does something that you expect it to do. Whereas with a lot of these amiibo, a lot of these different amiibo supporting games only support certain ones, and so it's a less reliable object, right? If I get a Skylander, I know it's going to work with every Skylander thing.
Yeah.
If I get a Ryu and I go like, man, I can't wait to see this Super Mario Maker Ryu costume, it's totally not there. It's totally not there.
Why wouldn't they do that? And I think what Amiibo did for me, because I got bit by the bug for a little bit, and it kind of opened me back up to the world of sort of more high-end collectibles. Like I was like, oh, they make a really cool, like Figma makes a really cool Link. Like he's in the Skyward Sword clothes, which is not my favorite Zelda game, but he's like $50 and highly posable and comes with accessories. I'm like, I'm gonna go with that. And I saw this, they make a Samus also. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I'm like, oh, they also make these classic sort of Zelda figurines. I'm gonna go after those. And I just started buying other stuff and got into Star Wars toys or back again, all that stuff again. So I think if Nintendo realizes anything, is that these can be a gateway drug for a sort of high-end collectible market, which I think they're getting with the Breath of the Wild stuff. Yeah. Like the new Zelda amiibo they're doing are really cool looking, and they're articulate and posable, and they're highly detailed, and the paint ops are really good. So
and we don't know the functionality yet, other than the wolf.
Sure, exactly.
That's right.
Yeah. So if they start doing stuff that's just like, okay, this is a really ornate, awesome statue, a really cool figure. Oh, and if you scan its foot, like you have extra hearts or whatever. That's a cool little thing. But Nintendo merchandise has been in such a drought for so long. Like to actually get anything cool is really hard. So if this is them sort of opening up the floodgates and partnering with more companies other than just like Jack specific and stuff like that, then yeah, that's where they can make more money, because there's money in merchandise. They're just not capitalizing on it.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't be surprised to see them have a whole new renewed amiibo push around NX. I think there's some stuff they probably need to do in terms of like what could be stored on the figure itself.
Right.
And I bet they also like start encrypting stuff differently to stop people from cloning them.
Yeah.
And also,
does that happen?
I think they might do, like if you look at Mega Yarn Yoshi, I feel like that's them dipping their toe in the waters of like, why not in the Figma line, there's also an amiibo chip, and that thing works. Like I can see them kind of pushing the boundaries of what an amiibo is, because that Guardian amiibo for Breath of the Wild is like has all the like crazy tentacles and you can pose them, and I think that's sort of the idea of like a new wave of amiibos that are like, maybe they're premium and more expensive, but they also have functionality is kind of a cool proposition for what they can do as toys.
Because to get to the Figma level, though, they have to kind of let go of this, well, we have to control the channel. Like, there are very few Amiibo partnerships. The only one really was the Skylanders one that they had with Activision, and that's kind of been it.
And I guess
they haven't
Shovel
tried
Knight.
something too. Yeah, but that was Yacht Club making it themselves. Like, they took on the risk of making those things themselves. They just got the specifications and approval through Nintendo.
Yeah, I just think in a year there's an absence of games and hardware sales, you make up money there. And then in a few years, this conversation might be different, because they'll have the theme park going, they'll have the movie deals going, and stuff
and they
like
had
that.
the Vans thing going. I mean, I think that for all, at least anecdotal evidence, those things are sold out in a bunch of places. So that's cool. That worked out for them.
They sold them to every single person at E3 from just an anecdotal evidence perspective. Yeah. Every single person there had that Donkey Kong shirt.
Yep. But Q2 doesn't look better for them right now. I mean, we have Metroid Prime Federation Force on the docket, a style-savvy game, Dragon Quest VII, Fragments of the Forgotten Past, Yokai Watch 2, Bony Spirits and Fleshy Souls.
Still not over
no subtitles.
Yeah, it's a winner. But Q3 is probably when things will definitely look better, just because of Pokemon Sun and Moon and the NES Classic alone.
Yep.
There could be other surprises, but then again, you never know. It could be nothing, could be something with Nintendo. Nobody saw the NES Classic sort of getting announced one day and then just going, hey, check this out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
and it's sort of up to them how that thing does. Like, if that thing is at every Walgreens Walgreens, every Safeway, like I think it'll explode this fall. If it's like a GameStop exclusive, then probably not.
If they they need to get that thing into everywhere that all the weird third-party licensed Genesis consoles, all the bootleg Atari joysticks, like Urban Outfitters carried some of that stuff. You know, like if they can put that there, where someone who doesn't play a lot of video games now can look at it and go, "Tiny Nintendo," and buy it, then that thing will kill.
Sharper Image is on that list, right?
Yeah.
So is
the 9 Sharper Image stores.
Is there a Sharper Image
around?
It's still around.
There's one in an airport.
Air ionizers that play Nintendo games. It'll be huge.
I think there's also
chair.
Brookstone, right, which is basally free massage around Christmas time.
That's Sharper Image 2.0. I like it.
Yeah.
All right.
No, so I didn't get to play it, but I actually held the NES Classic at Comic-Con, and it's adorable, and the packaging's really cool. Like, it's the kind of thing that I think you're completely right, Jeff. You put that next to like the old turntable section at Urban Outfitters, or like the old Nirvana shirts and stuff like that at Target.
Hot Topic would be probably an okay place for that thing.
There's a perfect market for that, and it's kind of like it's people like us, but there's also like lapsed gamers and dads and moms that grew up in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, just remembering that thing. So that should do well, but they need to make that controller cord longer, because the one I held at Comic-Con,
how long was it? Folks have been asking like crazy.
I mean, it's literally
like
the
3
distance
feet?
between Jeff and I right now.
Okay,
if you're not, it's the length of the average table.
I actually have coming tomorrow. I ordered from when we first came out. There's extension cables they sold for like $8 that are still on Amazon. So I just ordered one of those to have until November. Yeah. But that's not an ideal solution.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. I wonder what they're, because that thing will also plug into a Wii remote and stuff, and work that way. So I guess it makes sense to have the cable length be similar for that. But that's not a functional. That doesn't work.
We're just like, I mean, in the '80s, I remember sitting 3 feet from my television because I was a child and I didn't know any better. Also, TVs were way different back then. But nowadays, I have a 55-inch television at home. Like, I want to be nice and far from that thing and just kind of.
Not me, man. I'm trying to get headshots. I'm right there.
Just right in there. Like that scene when Aaron Paul's playing the
Rage
in Breaking Bad.
I played nothing like that, by the way. I just saw that episode again the other day.
Basically a different game.
It's Rage meets Duck Hunt. Okay, in other news, Nintendo decided to push back the Pokemon Go Plus until September. They decided to delay it, push it, however you want to say it. Their statement on this is silly, so I'm going to read it. The delay is due to the preparations for the Pokemon Go application update in order to optimize Pokemon Go Plus. In order for us to offer new experiences to play Pokemon Go with Pokemon Go Plus with the quality level high enough to satisfy as many people as possible, we decided it was necessary to take enough time for the completion. We ask for your understanding.
So can you explain what this thing is? Is this little Pokeball icon thing?
It's like I said the word cool. It's not cool. It's like almost like you can wear it on your wrist or pin it to your shirt pocket or whatever, and it has color-coded lights, and it'll basically tell you when something's nearby in the game, or we expect it to give you some kind of notifications, basically, so you don't have to hold your phone out.
If you go to the website for it, you'll find out that, okay, first of all, if you're going to catch anything, it'll only allow you to catch something using it that you've caught before, which is a weird condition.
What?
In a game where it's all about sort of discovery and finding something for the first time, you would think that having this device, and by the way, this is the one thing Nintendo is actually responsible for in this trio partnership between Pokemon Company, Niantic, and Nintendo. So that's one thing it does. The other is that at Pokestops, you'll be able to swipe across this thing or tap this thing and collect the items that are there. It isn't a weird design choice. I think aesthetically it's cool. Like I like the idea of the Pokeball meets the sort of like marker situation going on. It's not something I'd wear though. I feel like, I have an Apple Watch. I'd love to have that functionality there instead, being someone who put out the money for this thing.
Wouldn't you love to wear this thing right above your Apple Watch? So it's like you
no,
got that.
I don't.
Wouldn't you love to cover your entire arm with watches?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also $35 for this thing is just above impulse buy price.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if you hit $19.99, it's like, okay, yeah, that sounds right. But 35 is like a little
35
much.
is the price of the new Pokemon game.
Yeah,
That's right.
And I think you also have to start to wonder how many people will still be playing Pokemon Go come September.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, obviously they'll have an update for the app, and I count on them to make updates to try to keep people engaged.
Absolutely.
But anecdotally, I feel like myself definitely, but the other people that I've seen around. it's not sticking with a lot of people.
It's already waning for sure.
Yeah, or there are definitely people that are hearing about it for the first time and going through that process. And not to say that there's no one playing it; it's still huge, obviously.
Yeah, no, totally.
But I'm just, like the people that were most likely to be those early adopters. I see some of them falling away from it now.
Well, it doesn't help that Nearby is broken.
right.
Like, Nearby has been broken for over a week now, and
It's way more than that.
It's going on maybe 2 weeks, but it's more I still play this game. I still open up my app wherever I am to just see what's around, and when I see that the Nearby glitch is still broken, that you see 3 steps, I'm just like, okay, well, why am I doing this at this point?
So I think this is part of like a running issue that Nintendo is suffering from right now, and that they're almost completely incapable of striking while the iron's hot. Like the NES Classic, right? We all wanted that the moment we found out about it. How many of you pre-ordered it? None, because you can't. Still can't. It's been, what, 3 weeks?
Right.
A month?
Yeah.
A year?
Sure.
Like
sure,
you
I
can't,
think
30
that's fair.
years?
Your son's in college.
You
funeral.
already went and bought all those games on cartridge or on the virtual console.
Exactly,
and
just
why
thinking
would-
about them, like that impulse is gone. I think the same thing with Amiibo. Like they should have just put out as many as possible at once. And the same thing with this. Like if the numbers cut in half every single week on Pokemon Go, and I don't have stats to back that up, but I'm sure just anecdotally watching, like people are sticking with it, but also people are falling off.
Well, to that point though, what's the saying? Rising tide raises all ships, right? The idea that Pokemon Go came out, you know who benefited the most from Pokemon Go coming out besides Apple and Google? Anyone who makes a portable charging solution for your phone.
Sure.
Yeah.
That was selling through the roof for anyone who wanted to play this game for more than 2 hours while walking around.
And we all work in the same industry. I'm sure we all got those press releases from like random bootleg third-party companies in China being like, if you love Pokemon Go, you'll love this.
Well, and any cell phone case shaped like a Pokedex probably also sold like crazy to
And
that
Spotify
nostalgic
memberships,
crowd.
people listening to
The Pokemon
theme song.
yeah.
I mean, it's a weird thing because you're totally right. By September, there's no way interest is going to be higher than it is now, even if it's not this awful precipitous decline. But the thing is, like, Nintendo's statement is really funny because they're basically shifting the blame on the app itself. They're saying we had to delay this hardware because they would have to update the app to get it to work. And like from my perspective, as someone who plays way too much of this game, like, I don't want them to add more functionality because the app's just going to crash more. Like, every time they add a feature so far, it breaks something else.
Sure.
And so
or they
honestly,
had a territory, it was breaking something else for a while.
Exactly.
Yeah,
like the servers would go down. So I don't know. I think Nintendo's statement is like partially kind of a weird passing the blame to Niantic thing, but it's also just like, we don't need this right now. Like, you can keep playing the game, just fix what's there before you add more.
I do think the right update, like, and let's just look at how this app became as successful as it did, right? It was unprecedented. Like, with hardly any promotion behind it, this app absolutely rose in every territory. Google did not promote it. Apple did not promote it, and those promotions usually helped on the App Store 100%.
They make or break on the App Store for many games.
If this thing gets a cool enough update and Pokemon Go Plus comes out, it won't hit these numbers, but it will hit decent numbers. The thing, though, that Nintendo has to make sure is that device is worth getting. And I agree with you that 35 might be too much. And it kind of just reminds me of their insistence to not sell anything, or try not to sell things at a loss. But I think in this case, 35 might be that tipping point where you're like, no, I don't know about this. Like, it really has to make my app experience better for me to want it.
Probably depends on, how much money they actually do make from the app itself. Because, they can't sell at a loss if they don't get enough money out of the app to justify
like,
it, right?
Apple takes a cut, Pokemon Company, Niantic, like you can, like we don't know numbers, but I would imagine it's not like Nintendo is making even half of the profits from this
like
game.
if I gave them $1 on an in-app purchase, I wonder how much of that they actually make.
Well, so
5 cents maybe?
I want to say David Gibson, who is an analyst for, I'm forgetting, I think it's Macquarie Investments. He speculated that Nintendo sees 13%.
Okay, so that's
of the money on
that's
this
not
app.
bad.
13 cents on the dollar,
Yeah. That's again purely speculation, but still a number that's floating around.
That's not bad. And the people that do stick with it into September are probably going to be the people that you're monetizing the heck out of.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Even if it's a smaller base of players that go on to buy this thing, they will probably be the ones that are so hooked on it that they're like, let's buy more incubators, let's get more stuff, let's set these lures down, let's go.
That whole guppies and whales thing, which I hate that terminology, but
this game especially, like I've never seen. It's like I feel insane walking down Embarcadero because it looks like a commercial for some insane game where you roll your eyes because it doesn't actually happen, but like you hear people yell like Charizard, like 30 people run towards the water. It's like the most.
You and I were walking. We went to
thing.
lunch yesterday, and you're like, "I gotta go. There's a Geodude over there," and I'm like,
So
"All right,
it was
gonna
an
walk
Onyx.
back
It was
behind
nice.
it."
So no, but we need to talk about that. So Andrew was using a website called Pokevision, which is sort of becoming. Brendan was using it, but he told Andrew about it. So basically, this is a website you can log into, www.pokevision.com, and you'll be able to. This site is gathering data from Niantic's API that basically says where a Pokemon will spawn. So
Yeah,
it used to
like-
be
I mean, that's the thing. Like,
yes and no.
I feel like a crazy person because I can't get it to work. Every time I've ever gone to this site, it's been down. But Brendan somehow can find stuff on it.
It is a cool idea. I'm not going to front that this is a bad thing. Like, you can call it cheating if you want. I think it's an interesting way to play the game. However, like the 3 times I have tried that website, I can't live like that. So what I mean by this is I got home yesterday, for example, logged into Pokevision. I was like, let me just see what's around. There was like a certain Pokemon that I didn't have 2 blocks away. This is like after I've sat down, I'm relaxing, I'm home. You know, when you just walk in the house and you're like, I'm done
These
for the
shoes
day.
have to come off right now.
Pants are gone.
These pants are done.
The pants were gone. And
Burn these pants.
They just explode.
this guy weird.
Microwave my jorts.
So I see that this Pokemon's 2 blocks away, and it enters my mind. I'm gonna go back outside. I'm like, no, I can't do this. I closed it. I closed the app. I was like, I will live if I do not catch this Pokemon. One of us here did not do that. Instead, he left you at the Taco Bell as he went off to catch an.
I didn't go to
What was it?
Taco
An
Bell.
Onyx? Wherever it was.
It was a
That's
fancy
damn
salad
right.
place.
Excuse
I
me.
mean, so just backing up, the point I was getting to with this game, I feel like Pokevision, I do kind of think is sort of cheating, and I'm glad I didn't use it at first because one thing I was going to say about the microtransactions is that this game is weirdly social. And like, I think one of the things I spent money on was lures because Marty Sliva, also at IGN, hosts trivia at a bar, and like 30 of us were going like the first week the game was out when it was at its peak.
Sure.
And so we bought a bunch of lures and we were all trading off, putting them down. And that is part of the fun social side of it. And walking around meeting people has been the thing that kept me going. It's been that weird thing where I run to a couple and randomly they're playing Pokemon. We start talking about stuff.
Knowing winks, right? Like, hey, I know what you're doing. You
I
just
know what you're
swiped
doing
up
with
on your
those
phone.
swipes.
And then their instinct, and you kick.
Just
Let's go.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing. Like I'm at like 124 in my Pokedex. I'm glad I got that far without using this. For me, I'm glad to have it now for cleanup. Like I want those last 18 Pokemon, so I'll use this for cleanup.
So do you think it's cheating?
I mean, yes, absolutely. I think it's cheating, but more importantly than that, I think you're taking at the experience. Like the thing that makes the app itself is broken. It has all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
The social component of it is what made it a phenomenon. It's what makes it fun.
Well, and the surprise, right? Like,
Yes,
I mean, you go out
totally.
for a walk and all of a sudden on nearby, when it's working, you see, oh, wow, there's an Onyx nearby. Okay, I'm going to like scout around and look. And you do look like an idiot. I'm not going to pretend. I mean, I'm 6'5". Like everyone's noticing, like, where is the tall man going? I'm like, well,
Leave me.
I'm trying to catch
I'm
a
on a
lick of tongue. Exactly. But it's still, I really do enjoy it. And I've been talking to Andrew about this, and I think the one thing that did hook everybody, it is that moment that you catch that Pokemon. Like when that ball starts shaking, you just start going nuts because you're like, do I have it? Do I have it? Yes, I got this one. And it is the thing that fuels every silent fist pump that you see when you're out playing this game. It's just that feeling of, oh yeah, I got that thing I really wanted.
Yeah.
It's what everyone comes back for, but
I live in the
Pokevision
suburbs
takes
and
it
there's
away.
none of that.
Oh,
I had it running in my car, and a guy to drive through was like, "Oh, Pokemon, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, I'm playing that," and that's it. That's the only interaction I've had with a stranger playing this to date.
Okay.
In my neck of the woods, there's just, I've been going to gyms, I've been scouting, like looking around, going to public parks, looking like a crazy person in public park. But nothing. I have not seen
Who's the
another.
new guy?
Yeah, I've
Someone
not
leans
seen
over
another
to the
person
other.
playing
Yeah.
it.
That's
Yeah.
why I think it will very quickly drop off. I mean, I think they were smart to launch the original 150 because we've talked about this a lot. Like the fact that they hit that perfect blend of nostalgia where someone can open it and find Pikachu. You don't get that when you open it and find like Froakie or Chandelure or something. Like those they don't evoke those same emotions from people. So I think once they add that next wave, like I think it'll still pull in like hardcore Pokemon people, but I don't see it breaking through to the mainstream in the same way ever again.
Right.
I mean, well, I'll definitely be curious to see it. I will admit, I do see it dropping off slightly, but I think that done right, they can keep this going. Like, I mean, think about how much money this app has made in the time that it's been out as well. Like, it's scary.
Well, and the legendaries, like this is even before we've hit like, because I do think the big spike I'll see in renewed interest, I would assume, is going to be Mewtwo and the legendary birds. Like that's when people who started playing, spent $20, maybe stop for a couple months, will come back to it.
When you hit on it too, just that because it's so social, it's that thing that when you have a group of friends who do play it together, it's like any social online game, right? You can get your friends to play Overwatch, you can get your friends to play Call of Duty, you can get your friends to play Pokemon Go.
Yep.
You can't get Brian Altano to play Pokemon Go though.
Well, I'm not really into it. I tried.
For me, it's a factor of like just not being a lot of there are no other people playing it around me, and also I just like the game's very novel. But I just don't think the game itself is very good. So without that social aspect, like there's just nothing to it.
That was my thing too. I was like, actually playing it, like the actual hook of the fundamentals of actually interacting with this experience, it feels like
the gym fights are terrible.
That's
it's
the
just
worst
terrible.
If that was, and that's the thing. If you took just the gym fights and it was some knockoff Pokemon game someone uploaded to the App Store, it was just tapping, everyone would be making fun of this. Like it would be. You and Jack DeVries years ago made fun of it was called like Pokemon Spin Fighter, some awful thing that was like it was like a jumping up game basically. And like then there were little tap battles that were awful. And I think we've seen that before. But for me, it's like I'll go to a bar and see someone else playing it and strike up a conversation. And like it is that weird in a city environment and in a just wandering around with nothing to do environment. It works really well.
I keep comparing this to the beginning of like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where the teacher's doing that math problem, and he's like, "Oh, we'll say you bought 100 chocolate bars," and like, "Well, Charlie, how'd you get?" And he was like, "I got one." He's like, "You only got one?" Like that's how I feel talking about this game, because everyone around me is going crazy for it, and I'm like, I'm glad you're all happy. I'm not trying to take that from you.
Yeah.
But for me, like it didn't sink its hooks into me yet.
I wish I could have that experience, honestly. Like it sounds awesome, but it's just not happening.
Yeah, sure. I kept saying like if they made one about like a genre I cared more about, or like a theme I cared more about, like even just like a general Nintendo one. I know that doesn't make any sense.
Or Star Wars
or something like that. Like I'd be totally into it. Like when you said Onyx, I was like, oh, like the rap group. that would be good. If I had to find 90s rappers all over my city, dude, I'm
all right. So it's 90s rappers all over your city, plus like a Shazam style. If you're listening to the song, you have an increased chance of finding them.
I love that. Yeah, like so if I
cut this part out, we're gonna make $1 million.
If I get De La Soul in my headphones and I'm walking around, I'm like, oh shit, I'm listening to De La Soul, and there they are on the street right there.
Well, there it is.
Yeah, I think. The one last quick thing. Talking to a friend, his son actually is gathering with a bunch of kids, and they like have like a study group in my like tiny Connecticut town, basically that does homework, and then they go on a Pokemon Go walk. And I think that part of it, that like social element, especially for kids, is really cool. And I think it's
great.
something.
Going on a walk.
Yeah,
good.
That too.
Good.
Exactly.
People should go on walks.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. If anything, I've taken away most is, hey, I am actually going out of the house more. That's nice.
Well, Jose said that to me the other day. He's like, I'm walking around a lot. I'm like, you should have been doing that anyway. I'm like, that's what any doctor in the world was saying. He's like, I don't trust doctors.
For context.
Dr. Pokemon.
Exactly that. No,
Dr. Oak.
But even more like getting off at like the Embarcadero instead of getting off on Montgomery and like enjoying that nice walk along just along the pier. Like that has turned into a daily routine.
No,
and this
awesome.
game is because of that.
It's awesome.
Because of this game. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, NX Das Hype, Jeff, Brian, Andrew, we are all gonna talk about Eurogamer's big NX leak. We'll be right back.
Here we go.
And welcome back. Jose Otero here with Brian Altano, Andrew Goldfarb, and special guest Jeff Gerstmann. Thank you again for joining us today.
Anytime. Yeah.
So just really quickly, before we get into NX Das Hype, you guys are Das Hype.
Rolls off the tongue, right?
Big time Das Hype, hopefully. I mean, we don't know. You guys over at Giant Bomb just started doing video podcasting. Am I correct? Like putting your show like a live stream essentially.
Yeah, we did.
A little bit about that.
Yeah. So we've been working on this for most of this calendar year, which is ridiculous, but sometimes it takes multiple quarters to acquire equipment. We've been running this podcast for 8 years now, and we have had a lot of requests over the years. And we always like, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it right. So we finally built our own room and built it the way we like it, and decided to put cameras in it. So now every Tuesday morning for Giant Bomb subscribers, they can watch it live, 11 a.m.
Nice.
And then the archive goes up for everybody after the fact. So you want to see it on YouTube at the real Giant Bomb on YouTube.
Okay.
Giant Bomb was taken.
What?
I know. Well, yeah.
Squatter.
I know. We put the video podcast out for all to see. So we've actually been recording in a room with cameras for years and years. So we've actually always had program feed up with our dumb faces on it. So we're used to that environment. So it hasn't really been a huge change. But now we're just actually hitting record on the videos and putting them
That's
out.
awesome.
Awesome.
That's
Well,
really
folks
cool.
can find that over at giantbomb.com.
Yep, absolutely.
All right.
I hope it's as gorgeous as this sad brick room that gets to be 1,000 degrees. With paneling on one wall.
Yeah, we put up a lot of audio baffling. We went for the like audio approach, and then so it's not maybe the prettiest video set. We don't have fancy decor in a lot of our stuff yet. But
Fancy's a very nice word.
fancy.
Being generous.
Cream soda looks good. I don't know.
All right, so let's begin the Das Hype then. So this week, Eurogamer blew the doors open on the first, seems to be very credible NX sort of rumor story, which ties into some things that, I mean, Andrew, you can speak to this, but we've heard. But the NX will be a portable handheld console with detachable controllers, a number of sources told Eurogamer. This would be a high-powered, somewhat, handheld console. The power right now is somewhere between, people are speculating, a Wii U and an Xbox One, but it will be portable. Big selling point there. Dock station would show everything on your TV. There's some weird inconsistencies, but essentially the controllers would be detaching from the sides, and you would dock this thing and use that as your controllers. Am I leaving anything out? Last thing, no backwards compatibility with Wii U, so far as what they've heard, but that doesn't mean no virtual console. Just wanted to point that out. And lastly, actually, is that this will run using NVIDIA's mobile processor, the Tegra, but it's currently unclear whether it's going to be the current Tegra, a souped-up custom Tegra, or the next Tegra.
Yeah.
That's weird.
I think that's everything. Oh, wait, did you get cartridges?
Cartridges. Yeah.
Yeah.
They told them it
Cartridges.
would also use cartridges, but very unclear on what that means. I mean, we're not talking NES like big jams here, right? It might be a game card like on your 3DS.
Yeah, that sounds like a 3DS
Like an SD
style
card, yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
All right, let's
Yeah.
talk about this. I mean, are we excited? Are we not excited? Once
this
again,
is-
Nintendo's not chasing
Yeah.
graphical parity.
Totally,
with
and they
its
shouldn't.
competitors.
That would be a horrible move for them. You know, you see a lot of people that are somehow, you know, like some of the rumors have been going around over the months. Be like, I hear it's going to be more powerful than a PS4. It's like, no, what? No, that's not. This is Nintendo. That's not the type of business they run. They don't need that. I think this is super smart. I've thought it was super smart since, God, it feels like it's been like a year or something now that people have started to talk about this hybridized solution. And I think that's super smart for where their business is at. I mean, the handheld certainly does better in Japan than the Wii U did, and I guess that's actually probably true worldwide.
Yep.
So the idea of like, hey, let's just double down on the handheld stuff, but also you can hook it up to a TV if you want that experience. That seems perfect for the types of things Nintendo is likely to do. And it puts them in a unique space. The idea of like, hey, I'm going to sit here and play my game, and then I'm going to pick up this tablet and then walk away with it, and I'm still playing this game.
Yeah.
I think that's powerful imagery. That when they get to the announcement, they start trying to like sell this to people.
But this time, show someone leaving the house with
Exactly,
it, because
yes,
Wii U
definitely.
tried to sell the tablet controller concept. In that video, all it talked about was the controller. But what's the wording for like when you're jailed at home? Like
House arrest?
Yeah,
House
you were
arrest,
house
yeah.
arrest.
I swear I
Essentially,
don't know
while
that
using
from
your.
personal
the Wii U is basically an ankle bracelet.
I mean, it was. You can't leave the room with it.
It feels like a rough draft, and this is kind of the more fleshed out,
Yeah.
better pitch.
Yeah, I love the idea of them consolidating their handheld and console lines, because I felt like for the longest time, to be a Nintendo fan, and you mentioned, are you guys excited for this? Yes, absolutely. I'll be excited for everything they ever make forever, because I think that they're like that weird magical toy maker and off to the side of the industry, and everybody else is kind of doing. Well, you know, I love my PS4, I love my Xbox One, but everyone else is kind of like in this arms race. And look no further than the E3 we just saw with a new Xbox coming, and now another PS4 coming, and whatever we're calling them. And I like the idea of them doing something strange off to the side. But for the longest time, to be a Nintendo fan meant you had to buy multiple systems, and you were constantly jumping between both of those environments. You were like, I'm a 3DS gamer this month. Oh, next month I'm playing on consoles. Oh, there's nothing on this month, and then there's nothing on either, or there's too much on both. So consolidating that, I think, from a perspective of publishing games, building a library, and also just focus is really awesome. And it also gives them the opportunity to scale, so they can say, like, we have this idea for this very small game, we're going to put it on the system. We also have an idea for something like as big as Zelda, we're going to put it on the same system. So, and they all sit neck and neck.
Well,
which
that's
I
the
love.
thing that blows my mind, is just that, okay, so Breath of the Wild will be an NX game, right?
Yeah.
And if this is, in fact, the way this will go down, it's going to be a portable you take out of the house. Like, that is an unprecedented game experience as a portable game.
Definitely,
Yeah,
and I
nothing
think
comes close.
Then you start to get into like battery life, and you know, I think
Yeah.
there's
It's a main
a
concern.
lot of considerations around like what you do with some of these larger games as a handheld and how viable it'll actually be as just a pure handheld. But yeah, as someone who I commute in a car, I don't take a lot of public transportation. Living in the North Bay, I kind of can't. So I have very few opportunities to play my 3DS that aren't me sitting in front of a much nicer screen while I'm playing the 3DS and looking at that screen and going like, man, if I could just play this game there, that would be a way better experience. So this solves that problem for me. I think that's great.
I actually hadn't thought about it like that because I kind of go in reverse where like I have the big screen there, but I also love the idea of like curling up on the couch and just having a 3DS upside down on my face while my wife watches TV or something like that. But I never really thought about it like, yeah, I'm playing this game. Why can't I play that right there? And this totally solves for that. Like I'm someone that commutes in every day. I take the train in San Francisco, which is another reason why this totally isn't for me because I just can't play. Like I'm just in a crowded, packed sardine can full of people who are like, will probably snatch out of my hands and run.
Well, you're not at a great stop to get a seat is the other problem, right? I'm commuting from over in the East Bay, and so I'm one of the early stops, so I can immediately get a seat, whip out a 3DS, or take out a tablet and read. So it's perfect for that environment for me, and I'm just like, okay, if the selling point is that I'm going to be able to play these games, they're going to be high quality, they're going to look good, and the battery life is there. I think that's the biggest question in the room is just battery life in general has to be really good on that thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing that concerns me. Like I don't really have a commute, but I travel a ton. And so I honestly finish most of my games on portable and on planes. And so for me, this is like sitting in front of a power outlet on a long flight. This sounds perfect because battery life is less of a concern, but you can't always get to that. And also a game like Breath of the Wild, like if you're out in the middle of this open world and you just took down a temple or you just like are collected something really cool, like, and that red light comes on that there's a low battery thing, like that's not great, for a longer console experience.
Absolutely.
They're probably going to need to build the games around that with like some kind of save state or, kind of suspend mode in mind.
Or even a low power mode or something. Like I would imagine that when a game is docked, maybe it can do certain things that it can't do when it's in portable mode. Because if you think about it, like the amount of processing power that even Xbox 360 has, what that would do to impact battery life isn't great, as opposed to a tablet game where occasionally you'll get something like Amazing Spider-Man, which is content complete on iPad as it was on consoles, but there's way more fog or there's way more traffic on screen at once or something like that.
I think that that's where the chipset starts to like play into this, right? Because some of those Tegra chipsets are they're not huge power consumers. They might last a long time if that ends up being the chipset. If it's something else that's ARM based or something, like that stuff's built for this, so you might be okay.
Because I think about playing like Uncharted 4 on my PS4 and how it just started sounding like a jet engine game. Like, will this thing breathe? Like, will it need to? I think in terms of the cartridges thing, it's very fascinating because looking at some of their best games, their best looking games of all time, Mario Kart 8, for example, is roughly, I believe 20 gigs, which is, if you look at little SD cards and thumb drives now, it's nothing. Like I ordered for $25, I ordered a 128 gig little thumb drive that's like the size of an M&M, and it just tucks into the side of your MacBook just for extra storage. Because I was like, why not? It's cheap. It's cool. So that won't really be an issue. The cartridges thing, I don't know how much they're going to actually lean into the look of that. Like if they're going for a nostalgia play, like they are with the classic NES series or with the new classic NES thing. Maybe they'll make them look like cool little carts, or they'll just be ugly SD cards.
I think they will literally be 3DS cards. I think that there's not backwards compatibility with Wii U, but it would be really smart of them to do it with portable. If they are leaning into
library,
if they could pull that off, I think that would be. But I think in terms of size and stuff like that, and you have to imagine that this would have internal storage also for downloadable games and stuff like that. So
that was my favorite part of the Eurogamer report. My favorite part. I highlighted and circled it. The most interesting thing to me was the one source told them originally they were considering an all digital system, and that they were essentially talked out of it.
Which would be very Apple.
Yeah, totally.
If they can pull that off, and Nintendo has always sort of loved to compare itself to Apple, or at least folks have gotten that feeling. But ultimately, they're not, and they're very different than Apple in a lot of ways, right? Like they over-explain things. Apple is very concise when they show you what this new phone is going to be or what the iPad Pro is going to be, whereas Nintendo kind of belabors the whole thing by talking to you like you've never done this before.
And that's why I hope whatever this reveal is, it needs to be crystal clear. Like because if you think to the Wii U or the Xbox One, where like we were left with more questions than answers, that's not good. And this one feels like it needs to really nail it.
Also, I think even for consumers, they had no idea what they were buying when they got a Wii U. They're like, is this the new Wii? Well, no, yes.
I mean, kind of. Sure.
Does it use my Wii controllers? Sometimes. Does it require them? Occasionally.
Yeah.
Not for the games you want to play.
The FAQ went on for pages and pages. No. I think that's fair. But I do think that one thing that does happen out of this, and it, maybe by accident, maybe on purpose, but it does, consolidating does help them not have to answer the question of where do we put the next blank game, right? Like Pokemon, the game after Pokemon Sun and Moon, because I don't think Sun and Moon would make this deadline, would be a Pokemon RPG you can play on your TV, which is something
really
people
awesome.
have wanted
Finally.
for years and years. Animal Crossing would be an experience that would be on your TV at home and on the go.
And
that's another game
that.
that's great on the go, but that you'd want to still check in from home. And you can think of others. Hopefully this will, if they can get their schedules right, because I think the other problem sort of that hangs over Nintendo is just that, they put a lot of effort and a lot of thought into the games that they make first party, and they do have a strong first party. But jumping between devices and the decisions they sometimes make, franchises get left behind or franchise care falls apart. For games like Metroid, F-Zero.
Things get watered down, because they only appear on one and not the other. Definitely.
I think one of my concerns is the storage behind it all. Like the fact that we know that it's not going to play discs, right? I don't think it could, even whatever size that docking station is going to be. And then it's not backwards compatible. I bought a lot of my Wii U games digitally, so great. Do those carry over? If they do, what kind of storage does this thing have?
Or get your account system together. Sorry.
No, because the original Wii had terrible storage. It was like 128 megabytes or something like that. Something or 512, something like ridiculously low. But you didn't really notice because all the games were small. The new 3DS, for example, you had to have that weird surgical operation where you popped open the back and you had that horrendous clicking noise, and you put in a new I shake thinking about it. The Wii U, I have a external storage device sitting on top of my Wii U that's just like, I hope this works forever. Like, it's not ideal, so I'm hoping that whatever they do, whatever this handheld thing is, it's got enough space so that I'm not constantly managing the fridge, as Reggie used to tell us to do, moving stuff around.
That totally is valid. And then input is my big question, because if it's a tablet, and we were talking about this, if it's a tablet and it has touch controls, let's say, and then you have to dock that tablet, then how are you playing a game with touch controls? Is there a separate touchpad? Is there...
Take a look at Zelda. Did the Zelda demo at E3 have any touch controls?
None.
I mean, if that game is coming to the NX, I think you can start to build a case for why this thing might just straight up not rely on the touch screen for games.
It's crazy to me though to ship a screen that doesn't have touch functionality.
Well, especially because that does appeal to a casual. That does appeal to a wider audience, right? Like that is a very easy input system. And if you think about it, there are two specific games released in the past couple of years that have benefited the most. I felt like Happy Home Designer's whole touch interface for how you did like furniture stuff was the best way to experience that. I don't want to go back to rotating my couches like they were Zelda blocks.
Sure.
Second one was Mario Maker. How would you do Mario Maker without a touch screen?
And also, Wall Street Journal said this week that it'll be compatible with DNA's mobile games, the Fire Emblem, Animal Crossing, and games, theoretically Miitomo. So those are touch-based.
Someone familiar with the matter told Wall Street Journal that.
Okay. And so, I mean, if those are touch-based, would there be kind of analog versions of them?
See, but that scares me because then, like, do I need a data plan for an NX? Which right now,
that's a separate issue entirely.
The argument could be made, like, is that the direction that this handheld needs to go?
Maybe it's tethered. Maybe you could always, so if it's a Wi-Fi device, you could always tether it to a phone while you're out. If you wanted to go that route with it. I guess in that context of like, you would expect a Mario Maker to make its way over here, and if this mobile stuff makes it over, then I suppose a touchscreen does make sense. So maybe then the dock is less about setting the device down and more about connecting it up and still holding it.
And we also talked about, so what we had heard, we had a couple conflicting sources. We had some stuff early on about this. We had heard the controller snaps off and then snaps together, and that's your input. So what we were talking about is maybe there's a third piece, because even in mock-ups Eurogamer has done, they're very small, and we've heard stuff from Eurogamer's report. They talked about that becomes two separate multiplayer controllers.
Which was really confusing to me, because the original report didn't say that. It did say the detachable controllers, but then the Digital Foundry one says, well, we can hand each other the two units, and it would be two separate controllers.
Probably depends on the game.
To me, that's worrisome, though, because how big are these controllers? Like, I mean,
Big
if we're
enough
talking
to
about
play NES games on, I'm going to say.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
the very few scenarios where you're going to like play on a tablet and hand it to someone else is like, let's play Tecmo Bowl.
See, but that scares me because you do need a certain amount of buttons just to get everything going. I mean, if you go by just Breath of the Wild, right? I mean, almost every button had a function or a use during E3 demos. And if this is the same experience, and I'm not going to need like some U-shaped doohickey or something, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, it should ultimately have the same number of buttons on both sides. So maybe I'm just getting dragged into the minutia here, but I'm like, what is going on?
If we want to go
this?
speculation crazy, then
Let's
maybe
do
this ties back into their patent for the featureless screen that also has buttons on it, and you've got some element of that on each one of these detachable pieces. So when you snap it together, you've got a control space in the middle that lets you do your touchscreen sort of things. While still docked to a TV.
Yeah, and Andrew and I, when we talked about it, like that was something he pointed out. I was just like, what if you sell a third piece that is just an option? If you want to do touchscreen stuff, you could do it there.
Like
if not use controls.
Like the PS4
I don't think
touchpad.
they would, but I'm
like
not
something
sure.
that doesn't have a display on it, but is literally just a touch.
Yeah,
like almost like the
back
Apple
touch.
Magic.
There was also that
thing.
patent that they had for the clickable scrolling shoulder
Yeah,
mouse
button
wheels.
thing. It's like whatever
Yeah.
that means. I don't know if that's going to come into play. I'm hoping this thing isn't like a Homer Simpson car, and it's very clear in what they're trying to make it. Because like we were talking about before, like there's a lot of sort of mystery and confusion behind being like, do I need a Wiimote? Do I need a Wii U gamepad? Do I need a nunchuck? Do I need like the balance board? Like there's to take something like when we first saw the Wii. It was Reggie holding up that controller, right? Or was it Iwata? I forget. And it just looked so simple. And you were like, how am I going to play games like this? It's so simple. And then it worked. But then you started plugging things into it. And then you got an external, charging station. And then you got your storage device. And
recalibrating.
And then there was the sensor bar. And all of a sudden you're like, I have this rat's nest of wires behind my TV from something that looked so Apple and so simple. And Apple still gets that design of being like, here's your thing. Here's one cord for it. You're set.
But then it does. This all sort of funnels into what is this thing going to cost, and that's always been the reason that I have always kind of, and I've said on this show, like been kind of against the consolidating those two markets because I'm like, what would this magical device be priced at? And I feel like for them, it can't be more than $250, tops $299. I feel like for the audience that they want. That is the price is right between those two cones.
I actually see them hitting $249 and $299 with different storage options.
Yeah.
I think that, when you look at kind of where some of these, assuming the chipset stuff is accurate, which that seems like it might be the shakiest part of what Eurogamer is reporting, but whatever, they've got their sources. Yep. If you look at that stuff and start to look at other devices that have similar architectures, that's not too far off. Like some of these Shield tablets and some of these other things like fall into that range.
Right.
So I think they could probably pull that off.
See, I was thinking $199 would be the most amazing sweet spot to just completely
$49 would be great too.
What if it was just free money? I think that's the kind of thing where it would. $199 is so if they're going after that sort of like handheld market, I think that's where it starts getting appealing to parents, to kids, to people who are like, this is within reach of affording it. It's also like there's a durability aspect to it. My biggest concerns are honestly like the screen quality, because if you look at the screen quality on the 3DS, the 2DS, the Wii U, it's not great.
No, they didn't choose a great. They made a great choice.
And
there.
not even the fact that it's like a single touch or lack of multi-touch on there, which I think is going to be
heavy glare outside, as we kicked off the show with, right? And then the Wii U one was not HD, for example. That was a 40.
They're just lower res,
roughly.
And, I mean, I'll take that hit to play Breath of the Wild on a 10-hour flight, but it's not completely ideal.
Well, and that's where I think the cost can get a little scary, right? Like, what sort of screen have you chosen? What are the other internal components? That's all part of it. And then let's just go to the smartphone thing that Wall Street Journal heard. I mean, if that's true, that opens up the door for, well, maybe when we all heard that Android rumor, it's just that someone heard, there's a Tegra, there's a mobile processor in it. So someone jumped the gun and said, hey, Android, they're running that. That's what this is going to be about. And it ended up maybe not being true, but maybe getting mobile games would be a smart thing.
Yeah, especially because like our first thought with price when we were just reacting to this on Wednesday or whatever day that was the idea of revenue streams. Like that, like not that the 3DS and Wii U are really parallel and one-to-one or anything, but they're theoretically cutting their business in half if they're merging everything together. And so they have to make that money back. But if they're going into the smartphone market from the same device, that's really smart. If you're going to see kind of future DNA deals after these first 5 also on this.
But I feel like you're asking a lot because you're asking someone who buys, let's say, Candy Crush. Let's use that as that's a popular mobile smartphone game. You're asking them, I mean, that's free to play, am I right?
It's free to play.
For some games, you'd be asking them to buy that game.
Yeah.
Maybe the free to play ones would continue to be free to play, but I wonder if Nintendo would say, hey, okay, you've got to buy it on our system. You got to buy Minecraft on our system, for example, or something like that.
I think there's a way to do that. Like I'm really into Pac-Man 256 on my PS4 because it was $5 and all the microtransaction nonsense is unlocked. Everything's there. It's just the video game.
It's a better version of that game.
Totally. Yeah, and it's not constantly negging you like, hey, you should give us $1 or hey, what's going on over there? You haven't paid us in a while, like a shakedown. So so I like the idea of like if that's what they're going for, that also it relieves the worry of having it constantly have to connect to the internet and stuff like that. Miitomo, I mean, you could make a version of that syncs back up when you get back home. I don't know. Like the data plan thing is kind of worrisome because, I mean, most parents don't want to give their kids a data plan.
I just don't see that. I mean, you look at the Vita, like that's not realistic.
No.
You know, like the tablet plus data plan stuff, I think makes a little more sense because that's just a more versatile device. Like this just isn't something
so
that
like multiplayer with something like that would never, you think, ever take off?
I just don't think that it would take off enough to justify the cost of including it in the system,
right?
The ongoing cost to users. Like I don't think that you still think of Nintendo as shipping a video game console or handheld like device. I think inserting like 4G, LTE,
cellular radios, and they would put all that on AT&T and Verizon and all those other phone carriers.
I just don't think that.
SoftBank.
Let's say like Breath of the Wild's a 35 gigabyte game, 40 gigabyte game, 20 even. Like, where are you downloading that? Your aunt's house at McDonald's, like you're stealing Wi-Fi, like otherwise you're burning through your data plan incredibly quickly. Like that's a lot of stuff. I don't download 20 gigabyte games on my phone, so
I can.
Well, your phone won't let you too. Your phone will say, "Hey, this is over like 100 or something, 100 megabytes. You're not doing this."
And those are provider imposed restrictions. So, like, presumably, this device, if it were to do that, would have similar restrictions.
Which if they have it in Wi-Fi, it has to be a better Wi-Fi interface than the 3DS has, or even the Wii U, because. It's not a super easy, hey, a Wi-Fi network popped up, do you want to connect to it? Like it is, you have to delete one of 3 presets and then add in the new one.
Super annoying.
So,
and you can't, it doesn't work in hotels 99% of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
That would have to change too.
But keep in mind, without a data plan, this thing can't play Pokemon Go.
Exactly.
So
I don't think this, that's the other weird thing. Like we don't know. I would like completely just guessing. I would assume the DNA stuff could be part of this. I would not think Pokemon Go is. I would think that that's kind of a separate.
But that's a weird thing.
If it's a part of it at all.
Yeah.
Like if one of the box quotes is that it plays Nintendo mobile games, and you're like, oh, kind of like Pokemon Go, and they're like, well, not that one.
That's the whole confusion with the investor thing.
Yeah.
It might not even be the same versions of these mobile games. They might just be making unique versions of those games for the platform.
I like that a lot. That's a good idea.
But maybe it makes sense. You can make an argument 2 or 4, and we'll end with this because we do have to go. Another show's coming in. One, you can make the argument for just because if Nintendo is sort of positioning these games as a way to get someone started with a Nintendo experience and then bring them over to their platform, the fact that the platform would support those games, you would think would continue to hook that consumer. Potentially. I'm not saying that's 100% a lock, but then the flip side of it is, well, we want to give them something better. Like if you start with Animal Crossing on your phone, we could give you a better version at home if you bought one of our devices.
And hey, how about some of your progress carries over, like supplementary, like almost like a Street Pass situation of like, hey, if you're playing this mobile game, you're going to get this stuff in the NX version.
And that specific example actually is something they pointed out when they announced Animal Crossing. They said there is going to be some sort of future functionality between this and the next Animal Crossing, the mobile game and whatever Animal Crossing NX, if you want to call it that. I think that's the warning bell, so I'll let you finish.
Oh, well, I was going to say, I think no matter what the prospects of the system itself are, I'm so excited for the reveal. Yeah. I think just when we finally hear this stuff and how they explain it, it will surely create more questions, but I'm very interested to see what this thing actually is.
Well, we were just talking this morning about Sega's, they just announced 2 new Sonic games, and they put an NX logo in the end of their trailer. And they had to make their own NX logo because we still don't have one. We're at the top of the pot boiling with water.
Yeah,
right
well,
now.
and they're going to have to redo that commercial when this thing does get a real name, right?
Yeah,
on that
exactly.
trailer. It's not going to say NX forever.
Yeah,
that was a weird choice.
Yeah,
just put a Nintendo logo there. Don't worry, people figure it out. All right, so we got to stop there. Thank you very much for listening to the Nintendo Voice Chat. But before we go, I guess I'm going to put Jeff on the spot for 1 second because we did want to build a SNES Classic Edition of our own. And I just want to ask you 5 games off the top of your head that should be on that device. And we'll continue this next week for folks.
ActRaiser,
good one.
Contra 3, Mario World, Link to the Past, Super Metroid.
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank you for saying
nice.
actors. I feel like Mitch Dyer and I are the two people.
Yes, so good.
It's
The music is
game.
so good.
Yeah, it's really good.
Fantastic stuff. All right, cool. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for listening to Nintendo Voice Chat. We're a weekly show on IGN, but we are, in fact, not the only show on IGN. There's plenty of stuff you can get. You can find Jeff's awesome work over at giantbomb.com or the Giant Bombcast. If I'm, are there
Giant
other shows?
Bombcast on iTunes and on YouTube. Look it up. It's around. We're around.
Sweet.
Jeff.zone. I'm out there, I'm around, man.
The Jeff Zone. Oh, man. All right. And you can find out. No, I didn't. I had no knowledge of this. Sorry. I apologize.
He's got a new piece in Sound Blaster Monthly.
Yeah, that's right.
There it is. If you have feedback for the show, email us at nvc@ign.com or head on over to iTunes. Leave us a review. We're always grateful for your feedback. Lastly, you can find us all on Twitter. You can find Brian Altano at
Agent Bizzle.
You can find Andrew Goldfarb at
Garfep.
You can find Jeff Gerstmann at
Jeff Gerstmann.
And you can find myself, Jose_Otero on Twitter. Thank you very much for listening, and we will be back next week with more Nintendo Voice Chat.